Elvis Presley. The night that changed everything. September 15th, 1975, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Presley was performing in front of 18,000 screaming fans when a woman's voice cut through the music like a knife. What happened next would become one of the most powerful moments in rock and roll history, and it involved a 7-year-old boy who had less than 2 days to live. The Midsouth Coliseum was packed that night. Elvis had already torn through his biggest hits, getting the crowd on their feet, making them scream until their voices went hoarse. Now he was slowing things down, getting intimate with the audience the way only he could. The opening chords of one of his most beloved ballads filled the arena, and everyone was swaying, lighters in the air, lost in the moment. But in the third row, something completely different was happening. A small boy sat between his parents, wearing an oversized concert shirt and a baseball cap pulled low over his head. His name was Danny Sullivan, and according to every doctor who'd examined him, he shouldn't have been there at all. He should have been in a hospital bed, sedated, waiting for the inevitable. The leukemia that had been eating away at his small body for 2 years had finally won. The doctors had given him 48 hours, maybe less. Danny's mother, Margaret, had been devastated when her son whispered his final wish that morning. He wanted to see Elvis. Just one more time before everything ended. She'd tried to explain that it was impossible, that tickets were sold out, that they needed to stay close to the hospital. But her husband Tom, a mechanic who'd never asked anyone for favors in his entire life, had spent the whole day making calls, begging friends and strangers alike. 2 hours before showtime, a miracle happened. Someone who worked at the venue found 3 seats, not great ones, off to the side in the third row, but they were inside the building where the king himself would be performing. Tom had to carry his son from the parking lot. Danny was so weak he could barely hold his head up. But the moment they stepped into that arena and heard the music, something changed in the boy's eyes. For the first time in weeks, he looked alive. Every song Elvis performed seemed to give Danny a little more energy. He was singing along, his tiny voice drowned out by thousands of others, but his joy was unmistakable. Margaret kept checking his pulse every few minutes, terrified that the excitement might be too much for his fragile heart. But Danny was experiencing something his medications could never provide, pure happiness. When Elvis started singing that particular ballad, Danny's entire face lit up. This was the song Margaret sang to him every single night before bed, the one that seemed to ease his pain when nothing else could. Elvis was halfway through, singing with that intimate quality that made everyone in the arena feel like he was performing just for them. That's when Margaret did something she'd never imagined herself doing. She stood up holding Danny in her arms and she screamed, her voice somehow cut through 18,000 people and a full band. Elvis stopped singing mid-sentence. He looked confused, squinting into the stage lights, trying to figure out what was happening. The band members glanced at each other, unsure whether to keep playing. Gradually, the music died down. The crowd began to notice something was wrong. Conversation stopped. People turned to see what had interrupted the show. Margaret shouted again, desperation making her voice carry further than she thought possible. She wasn't asking for an autograph or trying to get Elvis's attention for a photo. She was a mother watching her child die, and she had nothing left to lose. Elvis put down his microphone and walked to the very edge of the stage. The arena went completely silent. You could hear people breathing. 18,000 fans, all focused on whatever was about to happen. Elvis spoke, his voice carrying through the sound system. He asked the woman to repeat what she'd said. Margaret, tears streaming down her face, lifted Danny higher so Elvis could see him properly. She told Elvis her son's name. She told him Danny was 7 years old. She told him that doctors had given her boy hours to live, and that all he'd wanted was to see Elvis perform one more time. The child loved him that much. The silence in that arena was deafening. Everyone could see the small boy in the oversized shirt, obviously sick, obviously dying. Elvis stood there at the edge of the stage, staring down at this child who'd come to see him. Then Danny, despite being so weak he could barely speak, managed to say something that would change everything. He told Elvis he loved him. Those 3 words, spoken by a dying 7-year-old, hit Elvis like a physical force. What happened next had never occurred in rock and roll history. Elvis turned to his band and told them to take a break. Then he addressed the entire arena. He told 18,000 people they needed to be patient with him because something more important than any concert was happening right now. Then Elvis walked off stage, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Backstage, Elvis was moving with purpose. He told his road manager to bring the Sullivan family backstage immediately. When his manager tried to object, tried to remind him about the show, about the schedule, about the thousands of people waiting, Elvis cut him off. His response was simple but powerful. That little boy was dying. He'd come to see Elvis, and Elvis was going to make sure he got more than just a distant view from the 3rd row. Within minutes, security was escorting the Sullivan family through the backstage area. Danny was barely conscious by this point, but aware enough to realize something incredible was happening. In Elvis's dressing room, something beautiful occurred. Elvis sat down next to Danny, who was lying on the couch, too weak to sit up anymore. Elvis spoke softly, asking Danny if he really liked his music. The boy nodded, managing to tell Elvis that he listened to one particular song every single night because it helped him feel less afraid. Elvis felt his throat tighten. He told Danny that was his favorite song too. Then he asked if Danny would like him to sing it just for him, privately, right there. Danny's eyes widened despite his exhaustion, despite his pain. He managed to smile. Elvis sat on the edge of that couch, and with no microphone, no stage lights, no audience except a dying child and his parents, he sang. It was reportedly the most beautiful performance of that song anyone had ever heard him give. 20 minutes later, Elvis returned to the stage, but he wasn't alone. He was carrying Danny Sullivan in his arms. The sight of Elvis walking onto that stage holding an obviously sick little boy left the entire arena speechless. People didn't know whether to applaud or cry. Elvis spoke into the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. He introduced everyone to his friend Danny Sullivan. He told them Danny was 7 years old and had been fighting a battle no child should ever face. But he also told them that Danny was braver than any of them would ever be, and tonight Danny was going to help him finish the show. The applause that erupted wasn't the usual screaming and cheering. It was different, respectful, emotional, the kind of applause you hear when people witness something sacred. Elvis sat down at his piano with Danny on his lap and began playing that song again. But this time something magical happened. Danny, despite being so weak, began singing along. His small, fragile voice blended with Elvis's powerful vocals in a way that was simultaneously beautiful and heartbreaking. Then, something even more incredible occurred. All 18,000 people in that arena began singing along, but quietly, respectfully, turning the entire song into a gentle lullaby for a dying little boy. There wasn't a dry eye anywhere. Tough guys who'd come for rock and roll were openly crying. Teenagers were sobbing. Parents were holding their own children tighter, suddenly grateful for what they had. When the song ended, Elvis held Danny close and whispered something in his ear that only the boy could hear. Danny smiled, the first genuine smile his parents had seen in weeks. Elvis told the arena that Danny had made this the most special show of his entire career. He thanked the boy for being there with him. As Elvis prepared to carry Danny back to his parents, the child did something that surprised everyone. He took off the baseball cap he'd been wearing to hide his hair loss from chemotherapy, and he placed it on Elvis's head. The boy whispered that it was a gift, something so Elvis would remember him. Elvis broke down right there on stage in front of 18,000 people. He finished the entire concert wearing Danny's baseball cap, and every song seemed to be dedicated to the little boy, who was now back in his mother's arms in the front row. After the show ended, Elvis spent another hour with the Sullivan family in his dressing room. He signed photographs, gave Danny one of his signature scarves, and promised to visit him in the hospital the following day. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Danny Sullivan didn't pass away that night. He didn't die the next day or the next week. Something about that evening, whether it was the excitement, the love he felt from 18,000 strangers, or simply the power of having his dream come true, seemed to give Danny a burst of strength that medical science couldn't explain. The doctors who'd given him 48 hours were baffled when Danny was still alive a week later. then 2 weeks, then a month. Danny lived for 6 more months after that concert. 6 months that every doctor said were medically impossible. 6 months filled with quality time with his family, more concerts, and most importantly, 6 months without the crippling fear that had consumed him. Margaret Sullivan said years later that after that night with Elvis, Danny wasn't afraid anymore. He knew he was loved, not just by his family, but by Elvis himself, and by all those people who'd sung with him. It gave him a peace that no medicine could provide. When Danny finally passed away in March 1976, he was wearing the scarf Elvis had given him that magical September night. The experience with Danny Sullivan changed Elvis profoundly. From that night forward, he made it a point to connect with sick children at his concerts. Not always as dramatically as he did with Danny, but he started paying attention to his audience differently. His friends said he was never the same after meeting Danny. He began seeing his concerts not just as entertainment, but as opportunities to genuinely touch people's lives. That little boy had reminded Elvis why he was really there, what his gift was meant for. Elvis kept Danny's baseball cap for the rest of his life. When he passed away in 1977, that cap was found in his bedroom at Graceland, along with dozens of letters from Danny's family and photographs from that incredible night. The concert where Elvis stopped his show for Danny Sullivan became legendary among fans. Bootleg recordings of that evening are some of the most treasured recordings in existence, not because of the musical quality, but because of the humanity they captured. In 1982, Margaret and Tom Sullivan established a foundation in their son's name to grant final wishes to terminally ill children. The foundation's motto, taken directly from what Elvis said that night, asks a simple question: is there something more important than the show? To date, this foundation has reportedly granted over 10,000 wishes to sick children, many of them involving meetings with their favorite performers, athletes, or public figures. The story of Elvis and Danny Sullivan teaches us something profound about what matters in life. Elvis could have easily ignored Margaret's desperate plea. He could have finished his song, completed his show according to schedule, and gone home. After all, he had 18,000 other fans who'd paid to see him perform. He had contractual obligations, a reputation to maintain, a show that needed to run smoothly. But in that moment, Elvis chose compassion over convention. He chose human connection over professional obligation. He chose to be Elvis the man instead of Elvis the performer. And in making that choice, he gave a dying little boy 6 more months of life, gave 18,000 people a memory they'd carry forever, and gave all of us a reminder that fame and success mean absolutely nothing if we don't use them to help others when we can. Today, there's reportedly a small plaque backstage at the venue that replaced the Midsouth Coliseum. It reads, "In memory of Danny Sullivan and all the children who remind us what really matters." September 15th, 1975. Every performer who plays that venue sees that plaque, and many ask about the story behind it. When they hear about Elvis and Danny, something reportedly changes in how they approach their own performances. Because the story of that September night reminds everyone that we never truly know who's in our audience. We never know who needs a moment of magic, a touch of hope, or just the knowledge that someone cares enough to stop what they're doing and pay attention. Elvis stopped his show for Danny Sullivan, but in reality, Danny Sullivan saved Elvis's show by reminding him, and all of us, what performing is really about. It's not about the stage lights, the screaming crowds, or the thunderous applause. It's about the connection between human beings. It's about using whatever gifts and platform we have to make someone else's life a little brighter, even if just for a moment. And sometimes, if we're incredibly fortunate, it's about giving a dying little boy the strength to live 6 more months by showing him that he's loved by 18,000 strangers and the king of rock and roll himself. That's the kind of legacy that transcends music, transcends fame, and reminds us what it truly means to be human. If this story of compassion and human connection moved you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of putting people before performance. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone stopped everything to help another person in need? Drop your story in the comments below. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our videos about the heart behind music's greatest legends.